Wait, is that a HIPAA violation?
So technically, no. It's not like he went through my medical records and found my contact information. But at the time, if this was a movie, it would have been like a really sweet, meet cute, like the beginning of our love story. But in hindsight, at minimum, it was a moral gray area. And at its worst, it was predatory. Sisters, and yes, you misters, welcome to the first episode of Relation Sis, where we talk about not only relationships with others, but more importantly, relationships with ourselves. My name is Kara, and I am your Relation Sis. For today's episode, we are starting a new series we're calling
The X-Files,
where we talk about all my exes who live in Texas. Joining me today is my co-host, reformed homophobe, ex-Christian, my very dear friend, Andy.
Thank you for the introduction. I loved being identified as those things, and they are all true. Very, very true.
So for those of y'all who are listening, Andy and I had a very interesting start to our friendship. Actually, would we even call it a friendship?
Did you consider yourself a friend with me after that, first dinner at UCLA?
I was talking about at summer camp, dude. So Andy and I met at summer camp in Indiana at a camp for Taiwanese Americans. He was a self-proclaimed moderate conservative on Facebook until I brought it to his attention many years later that was still his political affiliation, according to Meta.
2015, I think. So, yeah.
But met in 2010, but we parted ways that summer. Never thought that we would ever see each other again until one fateful day I messaged you on Facebook.
I was in a Christian fellowship, and I remember talking to a leader immediately after you messaged me, and I was like, this queer person from Texas is messaging me, trying to be friends with me. And I don't know if that's okay.
Okay, let's be honest. You didn't even know the word queer back then, or you wouldn't have used it.
I would not have. I was going to say this homosexual. But yeah.
That aged really great.
I know.
We met in college at UCLA, and apparently you took it as an opportunity from God himself to evangelize.
True. We went straight to some retreats and stuff, right? Which was nice.
Yeah. Camping with a bunch of Christians in cabins. What could possibly go wrong?
But I feel like by my super senior year, I was kind of not sure how I feel about this. Yeah. Anymore. So yeah, I'm going to hell now, thanks to you, I guess. Because you were very pivotal in that movement away from there.
Yeah. I brought you to the light or towards the darkness, depending on who you are asking.
Yes. But all my favorite people are in the darkness. Yeah.
And a lot of your friends are queer now, so you're welcome.
They're the best. I can't believe that we're still friends through all of that.
Thanks. So Andy, what qualifies you to be on this episode of
The X-Files?
Yes. So, because we have had such a long shared history, I've somehow made it to be your confidant in a lot of these relationships. That was a harrowing experience for me because it opened my eyes to a whole different world of dating. And yeah, I mean, I got to be front seat for a lot of these things. So I'm excited to get into it.
So for the first the first subject of the X-Files, we are going to do a deep dive into the infamous 38-year-old, the man who started it all. Andy had a front row seat for that, whatever that was. Andy, take me back to 2021.
Well, 2021, I was playing a lot of WoW, and he would just call me and share about different relationship things. How'd you meet again?
How did we meet, or what was our first interaction? Because those are two very different questions. So this was during the pandemic. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. Nothing good comes out of Grindr. So during pandemic, I took a break from all the apps because we were social distancing. But after I got my vaccination, I decided to get back out there, see what was going on. And he had actually been messaging me for a couple of months on Grindr, but your girl got quite a number of messages. And so unless someone said something that was like truly remarkable or memorable or stuck out, I probably just didn't click on it, or I just kind of breezed past it. But I also think that the universe didn't reveal himself to me until it was the correct timing. But he messaged me on Grindr one day after a couple of months of trying to reach me. And he said, "Were you at the hospital today?" And I was, because I was there for my annual checkup. And I was like, "Oh my God, like I've been exposed." And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I was." And he was like, "Oh yeah, we passed each other in the parking lot while I was clocking in for my shift."
Wait, is that a HIPAA violation?
So technically, no. It's not like he went through my medical records and found my contact information. But at the time, if this was a movie, it would have been like a really sweet, meet cute, like the beginning of our love story. But in hindsight, at minimum, it was a moral gray area. And at its worst, it was predatory.
Did you have any like alarm bells go off as like you're like, whoa, are you stalking me? Like, yeah, it makes sense that we would meet in that situation, but were you like frightened by this interaction at all?
No, and I probably should have been. I think when it comes to romance, there's a lot of things that at the time, if things work out, wow, that's so adorable. That's so cute. But then when things end or things don't go the way that you think that they will, it's a fine degree from turning from adorable to creepy. But at the time, I'd had my goggles on of, wow, 6'2" man. Oh, and he's pretty cute. And he's saying all the right things of not being on a down low, openly dating trans women. So at the time, I was not sussed out by it. But in hindsight, I'm looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah, hindsight's always 2020. Yeah, so I remember you calling me, you were really excited. I even think it's funny because we're revisiting it, and I probably had the same feeling around it where I was like, whoa, this is really meet cute, but like also kind of scary.
You had that thought? Why did no one tell me?
Well, I think you were very excited about him, and I want to say I probably was like, okay, are you sure about this? And especially given some of the other dating that we'll get to in future episodes, there was definitely like, oh my gosh, like who is this person? You know, just defensive. But yeah,
Andy's a big brother and he's very protective. Do you remember your mantra for previous men I have dated?
stab, stab, stab was a big one. And coming from a good Christian boy, that's like a lot of violence, you know? It's a lot of violence.
Yeah, he meant business.
Yeah, well, you dated some people who were, ooh. But yeah, so definitely always a little defensive, but you were very excited about him. And yeah, did you guys go on a first date after that?
Yeah, so actually the next day, he took me out on a picnic at a park by my place and, laid out the blanket, got me flowers, like had an assortment of dishes. He bought it from Trader Joe's. Okay, let's not get crazy now. But it was like real ceramic plates and real cloth napkins. And I had never had that kind of like romantic gesture for me. So I was like, "Sir, you have swept me off my feet." We spent a couple of hours at the park and it was just a magical afternoon. We did not kiss on the first date, which is, I don't know why we didn't, but let's say that it was intentional.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me like sharing right now, like I remember this was one of the first dates like around that time that I was hearing that this person, 38-year-old, wanted to be public with you and let people know about it. And I think that kind of put me a bit more at ease. Like, do you remember that, or did you have a feeling around that too?
Yeah, I think it was definitely not the norm. Again, because he had dated trans women in the past, so he had no misgivings about it and was totally open about it, not in hiding and not being kept a dirty little secret was definitely something that was of note for me. That combined with the fact that he was on paper the total package kind of just let my imagination run wild as I ran off into the sunset of happily ever after.
Yeah, so that, like, the beginning parts, I don't remember being that thrown off by the first date. But then my memory is clearest when I think there was a trip planned.
Yeah, so okay, and by the way, I wasn't forthright about telling this to my friends, and if for any reason you withhold information from your friends because you're afraid that that evidence is going to be damning towards their perception of that person, listen to that voice in your head. That's probably something that you should hone in on of, why would I not want to share something like that? So he didn't mention it in the first couple of dates, but a couple of dates in, he mentioned that he was actually going to Mexico for a week. And I was like, oh, okay. What are you doing in Mexico? He was like, yeah, I'm just visiting a friend and we're going to do a meditation retreat while we're there. And I was like, oh, okay. Who's your friend? He was like, my on again, off again girlfriend of 7 years. And I was like, oh, okay. And I don't know. I think for me, I grew up in a household where love and affection weren't necessarily freely given. So I kind of grew up with this idea that love had to be earned. And if it wasn't hard, then it wasn't love. And so there needed to be some obstacle or challenge in the way. So again, I think anyone who's listening to this would be like, girl, run for the hills. Like, this is bad news. But for me, he was like, yeah, like we've dated in the past, but it's totally platonic now. Like, she would be totally happy to know that I'm dating someone new. And so in my head, I was still thinking, I was off in La La Land thinking that we could have the Gwen Stefani cool fantasy of being friends with him and being friends with his ex-girlfriend and her being happy for us, but again, it was still very early on in our dating. And so any words that he said didn't really have any credence at that point. So, I was mentally preparing myself for the week of, yeah, will you call me when you say that you will? Will you be talking to me on a regular basis? All the while, I'm wondering what you're doing over there, who you're doing it with. Like, is there anything going on? And I actually asked him point blank period. I was like, so if you hadn't met me, had the thought crossed your mind about rekindling anything with her? And he went, no. Then he paused and he went, yeah. And I was like, great. Because that doesn't make me anxious at all. But
yeah, I think the crazy thing too is obviously the relationship happened. And when we were talking about everything, I remember we were pretty cautious about it too. I feel like you kept him at arm's length a little bit, right?
no, I think that there was parts of me that were, still keeping him at arm's length. We were dating for a couple of weeks and we actually hadn't had sex yet. And so he actually brought it to my attention. He was like, we've been seeing each other for a couple of weeks, just wondering like why we haven't. And I said, honestly, I was like, because Mexico. I think this is a good rule of thumb. Don't do anything that you'll regret if things don't go your way. Meaning when people withhold sex and they're thinking like, okay, I'm going to withhold sex for 3 weeks so that he'll fall in love with me or that he'll want it more or that I'll finally get the commitment that I want. And it's like, no, have sex when you want to. You can have sex on the first date. But for me, it was, this man doesn't owe me anything yet. We're not in a relationship. So I'm not going to have sex with him because let's say I do, and then he goes off to Mexico and has sex with his ex-girlfriend. I'm going to feel like boo-boo the fool, feeling like I got played when in actuality, he didn't owe me anything. But in order to protect my heart, I wasn't going to do anything that if things didn't go my way, that I would regret.
I remember you weren't jumping head into this either. So Mexico became like a big thing. I remember I was playing computer games and you called me very suddenly about everything, right?
Yeah. So I had sent him off, bon voyage, have a fun trip in Mexico, all the while my head is spinning. Like, are you gonna call me when you say you will? Like, can I trust this person? I wake up Sunday morning and I got a text saying I didn't go to Mexico. And I was like, okay. And I was like, why not? And he was like, I just had a bad feeling. And when I called her, I finally got confirmation of my suspicions, which was she was still hoping to rekindle things. And okay. I had already mentally prepared myself for like a week of wondering and kind of coping with that. And then, okay, well, you're still in town. Where do we go from here? He had an emergency therapy session and he was like, by the way, my therapist thinks that you're really hot. And I was like, cool. So you're telling your therapist about me. Cool, 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 cool. And he was like, yeah, I'd love to see you again. And I remember texting him and I was like, this past 10 hours has been a lot for me. Like, I need to just take a beat. But yeah, I'd love to see you again soon. And then he just replied, sure. And that's when I called you because I needed my man friend. And I was like, sure. Like, I have OCD, y'all. And the analyzing of text messages is like a very real thing for me. So when I get the one word answer, which was ambiguous in meaning, that like send my mind into a tizzy. So that's when I called you and I was like, Andy, what the fuck do I do with this?
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember just like hearing this and being like, oh, like this is kind of a grand gesture. Like he canceled all of his trips for you. I think this guy's really into you and making a grandstand of it, which at that time I was kind of like, oh, this is very interesting. And I was like, I think the ball's kind of in your court. It's just how you want to proceed with this because he was offering for you to meet up again, but it kind of seemed like he was giving you that space to make that decision yourself. And
Annoying.
I know, right?
Calls in your court. Hey, I just dropped a bombshell. Do what you will with it. Like, bitch.
Yeah. Guys will do that. Oh man, that's definitely a move.
Yeah, that's from y'all's point.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, look at all I did for you. I did.
So I made the executive decision to call him and say, hey, can we talk in person? So I went over to his place and I remember you texted me saying like, hey, I'm going to call you in an hour. If you don't pick up, just text me or do a reaction to my text just so I know that you're okay. Where was your head at with that?
Yeah. So again, like I'm surprised I didn't maybe like make a bigger deal at the beginning about how you all met, but like previously while you were like allowing yourself to get out there on like the dating apps again, you had one very unsavory date.
Yeah, my assault.
Yeah, which I don't know if you're going to talk about right now, but yeah, I think that was fresh in my mind. Yeah, you said it was like 10:30 at night. Yeah, 3 months ago, but still, you were going somewhere to me very late at night. Although, granted, I was living at home at that point, and anything past 3 o'clock to my mom is very, very late. So I think I was in that mindset of, oh my god, 10:30? Like, car cannot go anywhere at 10:30. That's way too late. So the fact that you were going over to this guy who, sure, I thought that he was into you, but I was also like, I don't know if I would trust this dude at this point. Like, please be careful. Also, I knew you were pretty in like an emotional state at that point too. Yeah. So I worry about you.
You're burdened by being the brother.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you're the baby in your family.
Exactly. So. I'm like the baby. So it's such a foreign concept to me. I'm like, why is not everyone worried about me? How am I doing the worrying? But so
you're a boy. You'll be okay.
True.
So I got there and he was expecting me to end things right then, right there. And I'm like, why the hell would I drive my ass out at 10:30 at night Like, if I truly was just going to end things with you, I wouldn't have bothered to make that trip. You know, but we talked it out, and I kind of said my piece of like, two things were going through my head. Like, A, you canceled the trip for me, which is a yellow flag, maybe a red flag, because we haven't been dating that long. And so that level of investment raises an eyebrow. But on the other hand, it was like, so either that or you're just a really poor judge of character, because you reassured me that, oh yeah, your ex would totally be okay with you dating someone new, that there was no funny business, that it was totally platonic, and come to find out that no, she was hoping to rekindle things with you. So it just put his judgment into question.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I was very enamored at that point. And at that point, he did let me know that he did see a future with me, that he very much wanted to be in a relationship with me. But also because I'd never been in a relationship before, I'd never had a boyfriend, I'd never been someone's girlfriend before. So I did let him know that if and when he asked me to be his girlfriend, that I wanted to be formally asked and I wanted some grand gesture. But he wanted me to be sure of my decision. So he wanted me to take my time, but knowing that he was exclusive with me from his perspective. And then I texted you that, and I literally put it verbatim, like, hey, he reaffirmed his desire to be in a relationship with me, and he understands that in order to be his girlfriend, I want to be formally asked with a grand gesture, and you hearted that. And then we were off to the races.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a big fan of that sentiment. I think that a lot of the things that we talked about, like prior to 38-year-old, was about either people fetishizing you, people wanting to keep the relationship like a secret. No one, it really didn't feel like anyone was like trying to like actually do like the whole relationship. And so he started hitting these relationship benchmarks that I know you didn't get to experience these things like in any of your previous relationships. I don't even think anyone straight up asked you. It was just kind of like, what is the word? Like a situationship. So I remember hearing that and him being like, yes, I will do these things and you deserve it. And I was like, dope. How did he end up asking you? Like, did he end up asking you?
No, so we'll get to that.
So he didn't ask you, like, how did the relationship change at all? Like, what was the dating dynamic at that point then?
Did the dynamic change? Well, I mean, he didn't go off to Mexico. So I was spending more nights over there, kind of half there, half at my place. You know, we were going on dates and things just got really intense really fast. Like, he was saying, oh, how would you like to decorate the bedroom? Look at the linens. Let's go shopping for bedding because you're going to be here all the time. Let's go shopping for toiletries and cosmetics to have in the bathroom because I want to make sure that you're stocked up on all the products that you'll want because you'll be using this bathroom a lot. So we were talking about the future and it was just playing out as if I was truly going to be like a long-term fixture in his life. I think in a lot of ways, I think he played a lot of us like a fiddle and killed us softly and said all the right things and hit all those benchmarks. So it seemed like things were getting serious.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this conversation. I just kind of thought about it. I remember because at that time, how old are you when you like met him?
He was 38 and I was 26. So there was a 12-year age difference.
Yes. But I remember him saying that he's like, yeah, I'm going to go raving with you too. Do you remember that?
I do. We were just future projecting about all the things. But what was crazy was he had already dated a girl with a similar age difference and broke things off with her because of the age difference.
Oh.
So it was like, homeboy, what are you thinking? But when you're kind of in that mindset, it's like, Oh, yeah. We were talking about making dinner reservations 3 months out so that we would always have a reservation and date night, set and planned. So it seems like, the future was in the horizon and that, like, there's the intention that this was going to be like a long-term thing.
I do wonder sometimes if I had met him, like, I wonder if I would have felt the same way.
Yeah.
Did he meet any of your friends?
Yeah, so during COVID, I had our weekly game night with my summer camp friends. And that summer camp, I grew up going to that camp. So these are friends I've known from childhood who have entered into adulthood and stayed really close. So we had these weekly game nights. And so it was kind of like, hey, come meet 20 of my closest friends. But in hindsight, I regret hard launching him as fast as I did. But I was getting swept up and, oh yeah, we're picking bedding and we're talking about, oh, we're going to live in Hawaii 6 months here, 6 months there. He asked me about what kind of wedding dress I would want to wear. In hindsight, I really regret hard launching him as fast as I did because when it came crashing and burning, it just made me feel all the more embarrassed. But he was charming. Like, it was literally a Zoom call with 20 of my friends and they put him in hot seat and they put him through the gauntlet. That's what they called it. And they were asking him the hard questions like, what are your intentions with our girl? And he was like, oh, to treat her with love and respect. And like my friends left the call with just like this really great impression of him. So he met my summer camp friends on Zoom. And he met a couple of my friends in person as well.
Yeah, I'm curious. Did anyone kind of feel iffy about him or like off about him? Do you remember?
So my friends didn't tell me about this till after the fact, which again, friends, if you know something's up and you don't tell your friend, and I get it, especially when someone's in that kind of headspace of they're so deeply in love, the judgment side of their brain is literally shut off. Like anything that you say that speaks ill of the person that you're dating, you might get defensive or, like, no, you're wrong, or that might further isolate them. But the friends he met in person, my friends had some reservations about the age difference. He was 38, I was 26, so 12-year age difference. That's a chunk of change. It's like a legit generation. And I think that sometimes it definitely showed. There were a lot of references that I did not know or he didn't know. So there weren't a lot of things that we can necessarily relate on. But like, again, I was enamored and I was still picking men that I felt like there had to be some obstacle in the way. And one of those things being the age difference. Like for me, age was just a number, but my friends who were older and wiser in their late 30s, early 40s, so closer to his age, which is why I introduced him to them in the first place, because I thought that they might be the ones to help him relate more or get along with. They had reservations because just even the optics of older man, younger girl, like you're not equals. Like older men date younger girls in order to like manipulate, in order to have control. So they had reservations. And actually, the first time that he met my friends in person, when I went to the bathroom, he actually asked them about their thoughts on the exoticization of Asian women. And all of my friends were POC, mind you, people of color. So they didn't tell me this till after the breakup. They were like, yeah, dude, that's low-key fucked. Like, it's not appropriate to ask like people of color about. It showed that he was very aware of the optics. Him, older man, me, younger girl. Him, white man, me, Asian girl. So he was aware of the appearances and he was aware of how it looked from the outside looking in. So my friends had thoughts, but they did not share them with me until after the breakup happened.
Did they ever tell you like what exactly he said about that?
I don't remember the specifics, but they just said the fact that even him bringing up the exoticization of Asian women kind of brought the question whether or not he himself exoticized Asian women.
He's like ruminating on this. Like he's like,
I like Asian women. Is that okay? I like them a little too much.
Wow, like what self-awareness? That's amazing. Yeah, but I remember you were saying that like one of the things that like I guess stood out in his dating profile was that he was pretty woke, I guess.
Yeah. So his Grindr profile literally said woke AF.
Yeah.
But I guess the more I thought about the relationship, probably in hindsight, because I was so disillusioned at the time, I think, and again, he was so concerned about the optics. Like he would ask me, do you feel like I'm performative? Do you feel like I'm faking it? It just felt like he was really preoccupied with the appearances of it. And, you know, him as a white man, like it just seemed like he wanted to be more relatable to people of color. And so there was one time he sped through a red light and he said, "It's okay. I can get away with that because I'm white." And I was like, "Sir, like you're not being relatable right now."
Yeah.
And he mentioned how like he made that joke amongst his coworkers and it kind of fell flat. And I'm like, yeah, because you're flaunting a privilege. Like it doesn't give you brownie points for saying things like that. Or I remember he really wanted to like commiserate with the feeling of feeling oppressed. So he was sharing about how him as a white man, how hurtful it was when people told him to get a tan. And I was like, if that is your contribution to like the conversation of being oppressed, like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, wow. What a minority experience.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
so sorry.
oh yeah, like wow. That's crazy. But then like did you feel with the exoticism and stuff like that, like it was like a fetish thing or like a
I don't think he fetishized me as a trans woman. I think he was truly trans attracted.
uh-huh.
Whether or not he fetishized me as an Asian woman,
Yeah.
probably he only dated women of color, but he had a special penchant towards Asian women. So actually one time I mentioned that me and my best friend, sometimes when we've had a drink or two, we kiss.
Uh-huh.
And he brought it up later in the bedroom. And during foreplay, he was like, "Oh my gosh, I think it's so hot that you and your best friend, who's also an Asian woman, I think it's so hot. Y'all make out. Like, it's all I can think about right now." And it was like him saying things like that, where it was just like,
Hmm. Yeah. That really got you in the mood, didn't it?
oh, yeah, you know, just. I don't know. I remember I was doing a FaceTime tour while he was gone, like showing my friends, and my friends were like, "Oh yeah, that's some nice Japanese wave curtains." You know, like the at the ramen restaurants, those flaps that you have to pass through in order to get into the restaurant.
I did what? This is yeah,
Yeah.
okay. These definitely like what? Okay, keep going. Sorry, keep going.
No, no. So it's again hindsight, you know. But I think for me, I fell into the trap of filling in his blanks instead of letting him fill in his own blanks. And what I mean about that is that I made assumptions. Okay, he's woke AF, self-proclaimed, like social justice warrior.
Mhm.
So I made the assumption that because of that, he wasn't capable of saying things that were problematic.
Mhm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's socially conscious, so he would never say anything that would be a microaggression, racist. So when he would say things like calling me an exotic Asian flower, like, yeah, that happened. We were at Trader Joe's and there was a display of exotic Asian flowers, and he goes, "You too are an exotic Asian flower."
Did you swoon?
No, I called him out later. I was like,
Okay.
maybe don't say things like that. You know, but again, like when you're in love, your judgment side of your brain shuts off.
Mhm.
So I didn't think about those things. Or I remember there was one time I was getting dinner with a friend, and I was telling him, like, because he was like, "Oh my God, like, are you going to get married to this guy?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe." And I was like, "Yeah." We were talking about if I would take his last name or if he would take mine. And he said that if he took my last name, he would sound like a Street Fighter character. And my friend side eyed at that, like, what? And again, like, that was like, I got checked. I was like, oh, I guess I could see how that might be problematic.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, like, what? Yeah, I can't believe he had dated other people and they, like, do you think he had made these comments before too? That is so wild. Did you meet his friends and stuff?
So actually, I met his family and I did meet his best friend. But that was actually 2 days before we broke up. His best friend is also a Taiwanese American.
Did,
Yeah.
you probably never got that person in like the same room and been like, hey, does 38-year-old say this shit?
No, and also again, like that's his boy. You know, they
Yeah.
weren't like bro.
Wait,
So
like,
no, I had limited interactions with the friends and stuff.
how was meeting his family?
You know, it was a pretty magical weekend. Like I spent the weekend in his childhood home. And we were actually there to do a Buddhist meditation retreat. I almost converted to Buddhism for this man. Like that's how down bad I was. And that would have sent my parents into a tailspin. Like, you meditate, you light incense. Like, what is this like in worship?
Yeah, we didn't escape Taiwan for you to become a Buddhist.
For me to become a Buddhist, to date a white Buddhist and convert to Buddhism. But that weekend for me it was a turning point. I began to tell myself this story that this was a family that I could belong in. Like, again, I've never been introduced to someone I was dating as their friends, let alone their family, and spent the night in their childhood home, in their childhood bedroom. And we used fresh fruit to use as finger paint, and we would paint on paper, and then we would pin it on the refrigerator like the American dream. Like, and sat in the hot tub for hours, and I was untucked in the hot tub and I was just hanging out with his brother and his sister-in-law. I just remember sitting in that hot tub and just never wanting that moment to end, because in that moment, like, I was telling myself the story of this is a family I could really belong in. And like, I don't want to lose this moment.
Did you meet his parents too?
His parents passed, which
Oh,
to me was a relief too. He said his mom would have loved me,
Yeah.
but there was a part of me that was relief because his brother and his sister-in-law were so great. Like,
yeah.
never having to have bad interactions with in-laws who are not about my tea.
Yeah. I just remember they were accepting. It was cool, and again, this doesn't happen, unfortunately, every day. So I remember I was like, "Oh, cool! You met his family. You guys got along."
He took a tour around his childhood community. And when he drove past his high school, and his brother was like, "Oh yeah, guess what the mascot was here?" And he was like, "Yeah, Billy was a cougar." And I said, "Still is. Still is." And his brother and his sister-in-law thought that I was like a hoot and a half, but he did not care for that joke. And I think in hindsight, like when he brought it to my attention later, I think it was something that he really latched onto. Like, he was very preoccupied with the age difference. And, you know, at the beginning when we had first started dating, I asked him about his thoughts about the age difference, and he was like, "Look, I'm 38. I'm too old to be fucking around. Like, I wouldn't be wasting my time if I didn't see a future with you." So I took him at his word.
Did you ever feel like he was like love bombing you? Did you feel like anything was amiss?
Was I love bombed? Yes. Did I know at the time? Probably not. I think that was one of the lessons I needed to learn. I was really just there for the ride. I got swept up in it, you know? Again, it was like this person who's telling me, saying all the right things, and we're talking about, again, like my wedding dress. And so in an alternate reality, we just live happily ever after and ride off into the sunset. So yeah, I had a lapse in judgment. I let myself get swept up in all of it.
I want to be defensive a little bit and just reiterate how rare of an experience this was too, though. Like, to have someone, after all the people that you dated, like act in this way to you. And, you know, like, I don't think it's like unfortunately, like an uncommon relational dynamic. But I think that a lot of people, this happens regardless of whatever relationship or sexual orientation people are. But I do remember just being like, wow, I'm glad that there is a person who wants to be, that's communicating that they want to be with Kara, you know, for the long term and planning the future and stuff like that. So I remember, yeah, in all of this, I was like, this is cool. And hearing the updates was really great until it wasn't great. Was there anything that you felt was like unhealthy with that relationship, even though he was saying all the right things?
Our dynamic was pretty gross at times. Your girl had daddy issues, so he would tuck me in at night and kiss me on the forehead. And I was complicit in that. Okay. It was a new phenomenon for me. Shut your mouth. Okay. Don't give me that look. Again, when you're withholding information from friends, that's probably a telltale sign that something is amiss here. I also think that the relationship was heavily driven by sex in certain ways that weren't necessarily healthy or sustainable. It was such an interesting dynamic because he's older, I'm younger, but I'm the dom, he's the sub. And so you want to play around with like that dynamic. But I think that he had some demons to battle with. I remember there was this one time we were leaving to go to Trader Joe's. We went to Trader Joe's a lot, if that wasn't already abundantly clear. And I asked him, I was like, oh, how would you feel? How would you respond if I bought you a waifu pillow? So for those of y'all who don't know what a waifu pillow is, it's a body pillow with usually scantily clad anime girl on it. And he was receptive to the idea. And so we're going to Trader Joe's. I just popped into the restroom at his place real quick. And when I came back out, he had pulled his pants down, dropped trowel, and he was dry humping a pillow, just trying to rub one out. And I was just so confused. I was like, how did we get here? It was like point A to point C. And he was just like, oh, I just got really excited about the idea of that pillow. And I was like, okay.
Trying to be funny? Do you think? Like, what?
No, I think something genuinely took over him and he just got really excited at that idea. So yeah, I walked out from the restroom and I just see him ass up, pants down, dry humping. And I was like, sir, we're going to Trader Joe's.
That is a premier establishment.
But I don't know. I have this one memory. Again, lots of sex, very, sexually driven, animalistic attraction. But I remember there was this one day, it was like 7 a.m. And mind you, people with certain body parts, a certain phenomena happens in the morning. And so he witnessed that maybe there was a little semblance of something going on over here. And he got really excited at that. And he jumped out of bed and immediately went to go clean himself out. And mind you, it's 7 a.m. Like I haven't even had time to put in my contacts, brush my teeth. But he was just so excited. So he just went to go clean himself out, came back, hopped into bed, and just kind of got me into upright locked position and hopped on. And I remember in that moment, I don't know, I felt like I was kind of between a wall and a hard place. Like, it was a little triggering for me, to be honest, because it was just like, obviously, I want to be able to provide pleasure to my partner, but also it was just such an awkward position. It was presumptuous of like, I wanted to know that if I wasn't in the mood, that I could have said no.
So how did you feel about that?
I don't know. It was a little awkward. Like, again, I want to be able to give pleasure to my partner, but also if I'm not in the mood, I'm not in the mood. Or like, again, I don't know. It's like that. Well, obviously you have the right to say no, but would that no be well received? So I don't know. I think a lot of women and a lot of people in general can probably empathize with that experience of not necessarily like, oh, pressure, but it's like a wanting to please your partner. No matter the circumstances. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you feel like, though, at any point within the dynamics of your sex and kind of the dating life, when did you start feeling, or did you feel like, hey, there's something a little off here?
Yes and no. I think a lot of times when people are like, oh, I don't feel that spark with someone, what that really means is this person does not throw me off at ease as much as I think that I should feel in order to feel like I'm in love. So when people have these torrid like roller coaster romances. To them, that's this idea of what being in love feels like. It's ups, it's downs, it's high highs and low lows. So I think that the relationship had enough of those peaks and valleys for me to still keep riding that ride. I'm thinking like, yes, this is what love is.
What is your attachment style?
I'm an anxious attachment. Textbook. Yeah. So yeah, and again, daddy issues and tuck me in. Yeah, not my proudest moment. Yeah, my attachment style was very much deep rooted in like, love me. Who's gonna love me? Who's gonna hold me? Who's gonna give me the attention and the affection that I so deeply crave? He was an avoidant. And I think that was really telling in just the way his relationships went in the past. Like probably the 5 relationships prior to me, he broke up with them on the basis of not seeing a future with them, which arbitrary ass reasoning. You know, and even the girl that he dated directly before me, he dated her for a couple of months, asked her to move in, and then within a month or 2 broke up with her because he couldn't see a future with her.
What? He told you this, right?
Yes.
And did you kind of go, whoa, wait a minute, that sounds very familiar?
Familiar?
Like, did you ever think like, oh, like what happened to his ex could happen to me?
That's actually a pretty good segue to talk about the beginning of the end.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I remember there was one morning he was doing the dishes. And again, I told him right from the get-go when we first started dating that if and when he was going to ask me to be his girlfriend, that I wanted that grand gesture. So he was doing the dishes, and at this point, he had already been calling me his girlfriend to his coworkers. He introduced me as his girlfriend to his neighbors, all the while having never asked me to be his girlfriend and doing that grand gesture. But when I first got with him, I let him know that, again, like I didn't want my first boyfriend, my first relationship to be a fluke. So I was like, don't ask me to be your girlfriend if in a couple of months you're going to break up with me. And I think his mind latched onto that as well, like his avoidant nature. So he was doing dishes and he basically just dropped the bombshell. He was like, yeah, so remember how you told me that don't ask you to be my girlfriend if I'm going to break up with you? And he was like, yeah, well, the reason I haven't asked is because I just don't feasibly seeing this relationship lasting. And again, like shell shock. And for him, he was like, well, glad I got that off my chest. Hey, let's watch this Stacey Abrams documentary. And I'm like, oh, you're not eating. You don't have an appetite. Oh, you seem to be going through something while we're watching this documentary. What's wrong? And it's like, sir, you just fucking dropped a fucking bomb on me.
I like how you felt relieved after. He's like, yay, I did it.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, and so when he first said that, I was like, bitch, did we just sit in on the same conversation? Did you hear it the way I heard it? So in that moment, when you were asking me about whether or not I thought that like I could find myself in that same boat as like his 5 previous exes, you know, I told him, I was like, okay, you not being able to see a future with the girls you date, like that's a you problem. And I know it is. You know, and in that moment, I should have just walked away right then and there. But I wasn't ready to. So I told him, I was like, hey, I'm going to Korea in a couple of months to go get my voice surgery. If we don't know what this is by that point, then we should just call it quits. So that was the beginning of the end. And mind you, this was actually the day before my big comedy show on Zoom you sat in on. Yeah. So again, horrible timing. I'm like, dude, this is my first paid comedy gig, and you choose to drop this bombshell on me 24 hours prior. This conversation had literally happened like any other time. And also, what was infuriating about that, he had some addictive tendencies. And so one of the things that he was wanting to cut down on was his use of Mary Jane. And so, he was like, I hate the way Mary Jane makes me feel. I don't want to use it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually asked me to hold on to his Mary Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And the day of my comedy show, like literally the hour before my comedy show, he texted me and he was like, hey, can I use some Mary Jane tonight? Like, I really want it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was livid.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I have my comedy show in an hour. I don't have the emotional bandwidth to deal with this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did the comedy show on Zoom from my place.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, I went over to his place.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, I was like, hey, can we talk? And he goes, oh my God, about what? And I was like, excuse me, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, 24 hours, you dropped a bombshell on me. Like, hey, I don't see a future with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, we're going to have a conversation and I'm allowed to have my feelings about it, But I told him, I was like, were you serious about whether or not I would allow you to use your Mary Jane? And the reason why it was so infuriating to me, it's like, sir, you're 38.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not your mother. I'm not your keeper. Like, do not pull me into this.
Yeah.
And that, just snowballed with the fact, again, you're calling me your girlfriend without doing that one gesture that I was asking for.
Uh-huh.
And I'm taking on responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
that, for all intents and purposes, we're not even in a relationship yet.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really unfair to me.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, I was doing all the right things and saying all the right things and showing him how I could be a good partner. And he really appreciated that. He was like, oh my God, no, you're totally right. Like, my mom and dad were codependent with my dad's addiction. So I can see how I'm kind of repeating that cycle and it's not fair to you.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, thank you for sharing. Thank you for having this conversation with me. That was really important to me. So from my perspective, I was adding value to his life.
Mm-hmm.
My friend gives me so much flack for this, but the moment he knew that I was down bad was because one time I FaceTimed him and I was making chocolate covered strawberries for the world. And my friend was like, Cara, what the fuck? But it was like, this man is telling me, oh, like I'm the most mature girl he's ever dated. Like I'm the most emotionally intelligent girl he's ever dated. Hottest girl he's ever been attracted to, like all these things. And I'm adding value to his life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having those hard conversations with him. I'm encouraging him to have a life outside of me. Go take that extra shift. Go hang out with your friends. Mm-hmm. So it was just all the more like big slap to my face, all the while knowing at the end of all this, you still can't give me the commitment that I deserve.
Yeah, yeah. And after having this conversation with him about the codependency and the reliance on you controlling his addiction with marijuana and stuff like that, did you feel hopeful that maybe this could last?
No, but he gave me hope. Like I was skeptical, but he was like, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to going on that camping trip with you and my family. And I was like, do you think we're going to make it that far? And he goes, I think so. Like he was leaving that door open. Like, hey, my mind could change about this.
Yeah. How far in advance was that? Like, were we talking months, like 2 months, 3,
It was within a month, like maybe 3 weeks out.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And, he had that hard conversation with me on a Thursday. My comedy show was on a Friday where I called him out about the codependency. And then come Sunday, he's asking me for date night on that following Thursday. And for our last date, he took me out to a rooftop bar in Venice. We watched the sunset.
Oh, my.
And yeah. And then the day after that, we were making plans with his best friend to get dinner at his place sometime. And 38-year-old was also asking me, we should plan a trip to Costa Rica. So again, I was given false hope.
So how much longer does it drag on before, like, you guys actually...
After hanging out with his best friend, 2 days.
Oh my God. So what happened?
It was a Sunday morning. It was Easter Sunday morning.
Oh,
the Lord hath risen.
I know.
It's the Lord's day. We woke up, went to Powtown. And we were cuddling after, and I was resting my head on his chest. And I told him, "You always make me feel so safe." He sat up really suddenly, and I could tell that something in him had switched in his mind. And, from my perspective, I thought it was like, oh my God, he's finally come to his senses. He's going to say, like, what are we doing? We should be together. So he sits up immediately. He goes, my attraction for you is only growing stronger, but my reservations about the age difference aren't changing. So we should just call it.
Wow, what a line.
Bitch, what?
I know. What?
Sir, I have not put my contacts in. So I asked him, I was like, so you've decided? And he goes,
oh.
He goes, yes. And by the way, it's not the most avoidant thing you've ever fucking heard.
It's not you. It's me. Peace.
Oh, I know it's you. Yeah, but it's like my feelings are growing too strong. Therefore, I must leave from this situation.
I cannot control my passion.
Like, I was shell-shocked. I haven't even had time to put in my contacts. Like, this is not what I was expecting to wake up 2 a.m. And I told him, I was like, it seems like you have a lot of figuring out to do. And I hope that when you finally come to your senses, I hope I'll still be here. But in the meantime, I need to go be with someone who sees my value and my worth. And I wish you the best. I hope you find what you're looking for. But honestly, I don't know if you ever will. And he said that was his fear too. So I started packing my things, packed up all my things, and he made sure that I didn't leave a single thing, including my Lush face mask in the fridge.
What a gentleman. So nice.
What a gentleman.
So
Class
helpful.
act.
I know.
Class
Wow.
act he is. But he was walking me to my car with all my stuff. And then he said the most infuriating thing. So when do you want to go hiking? Motherfucker, no. We could have gone hiking. We could have gone on all the fucking hikes. But you decided.
He's too afraid of the age difference. Oh my gosh.
It's like, you want the breakup? I'll give you the breakup.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I was like, this was before he said that infuriating thing, but like, I was still in kind of let's salvage this mode.
Yeah.
But I asked him, I was like, do you think down the road we could be friends? He said, sure. But I'm always going to be attracted to you.
What'd you think of that line?
So no, we can never be friends. I mean, I know it's true.
Yeah.
So I asked him, I was like, so where do we go from here? And he was like, ball's in your court. Fuck off. Fuck you.
Sure.
Not doing this, sir.
So did it click for you at that point? Because you were like, oh, we can salvage this. At that point when he's like, balls in your court, what do you think of that?
I think that certain doors are not meant to be reopened. So I was like, you're right, ball is in my court and I'm making my move. So he packed all my stuff into my car, said, go on, get out of here. Went back inside to his house. Actually, it was the back house. He lived in a guest house in someone else's backyard. So he just went back into the backyard. Go on, get.
So what kind of headspace were you immediately after that breakup?
I felt pretty stupid. And I don't like feeling dumb. Like, I couldn't tell what was what anymore, what was real, if what we had was real. And one of the pieces of advice that you gave me actually really stuck with me. Like, I asked you, I was like, should I have known better? Like, I'm too smart for this. But what you told me was how exhausting it must be for someone to question someone's intentions every step of the way. Like, if I had no reason to doubt him and his words, and he was telling me his intentions with me, why would I question that?
I'm pretty fucking smart sometimes.
Yeah, Yoda.
I'll take all credit for that. I don't remember saying that, but I'm so glad I said something. So at this point, did you understand why it had to end?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, we should have never dated. But what was really infuriating was that the one thing that didn't change from the start to end was the age difference.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he had already dated someone with a similar age gap and didn't see a future with her. So, like, what was he expecting to be different in his outcome? And, let's say it had worked out, it would have stunted my growth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this podcast wouldn't be happening if we had stayed together. Like, my life's trajectory would have completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, let's say we had gotten married and I would have been a wife and that would have been it. I wouldn't be with my current partner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so much of my life would change, the people I've met and where I'm going in life. So I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So do I think dating him was a mistake? Yes and no.
Did you ever entertain like the idea that he was the love of your life?
I feel like in the moment, everyone feels that way. Like, love is a drug. And when you go through a breakup, your literal drug of choice has been ripped away from you. So you go through withdrawal symptoms. And so just because you miss someone doesn't mean that they're right for you. And just because you're in love with someone does not change the fact that they can be terrible for you. Drugs can be terrible for you. And so when you do things like drive past their old street or show up at their old workplace, just because it's normal does not mean that it's justified. I think there's a difference between losing the love of your life and losing someone and acting as if they were the love of your life. So many people that go through heartbreaks, they're like, man, it wasn't perfect, but that was the love of my life. Like, if things had just worked out, like, sis, nothing that's for you will ever leave you. That person can't possibly be the love of your life based on the sheer basis that they are no longer here. Anyone can give you 2 months, 6 months, 2 years. When people think back to that 2-year relationship where they were so in love and they were in the honeymoon phase and that person was so perfect, that person gave you all that they had. They gave you 2 years. Hell, anyone can give you a good 5 years. So when people look back at past relationships where everything was lovey-dovey and it was so perfect and if things had just worked out, but they didn't. Sometimes breakups happen and that's okay. Sometimes the breakup is inevitable because you're not right for each other and there wasn't anything that you could say or do that would have changed that.
So does it feel like your definition of trust or how you take people at face value has changed because of this?
I used to think that trust was there until it wasn't. Now I think that trust is built over time. People tell you don't trust words, trust actions. But I want to give a caveat to that. I think that actions over time build trust. We need to stop putting stock into individual actions. Like, let's say you've slept over at someone's place every night for a week. Congratulations. You just went on the world's longest sleepover. Let's say someone introduces you to their family within the first month that you're dating. Maybe in your culture, meeting the family is a really serious first step. And that means that you're on the marriage track. But maybe for them, meeting the family is just a pit stop along the way. So if you've gone on 6 dates, you've gone on 6 dates. You've met someone's family. Great, you've met someone's family. But that doesn't mean that you have commitment. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have trust either. Guy Finch has this great quote that in this life, there's a finite number of mistakes that we make. And if we don't learn those lessons from those mistakes, then we're going to keep making those same mistakes over and over again until we learn those lessons. And I think for this relationship, it was the lesson of knowing my value and my worth outside of someone's attraction towards me, to not go chasing affection from those who won't give me what I deserve, and to not take the easy way out, to not go chasing that money, to go chasing the D and all those things. But I don't believe that everything happens for a reason. But I do think that people come into your life for a reason. And I think that he was one of those people that I needed to learn that lesson. And I had to learn the hard way. And again, that's me finding the silver lining in all of this. Like, don't get me wrong, like, heartbreak sucks. Like, getting dumped is someone literally rips your heart out of your chest. And in those moments, sure, you have your moments of fuck you. But I've learned that when you're healing from a breakup, the first step in relieving yourself of that heartbreak is to actually be grateful. Be grateful towards the person that dumped you, because they saw that I can't give this person what they need. I can't give what this person deserves. I'm not the person for them. So when someone breaks up with you, they're making room for you to go find that person, the one who will stay, the one who will love you the way that you want to be loved and the way that you deserve to be loved. Again, that's the silver lining in all of it.
I also think, you know, because I'm closer to you and I root for you more than I would ever. You know, we could stab have him too, but you know, like, it takes a lot of strength to walk away from that situation. So yeah, I was very proud of you too when you broke things off. I mean, it wasn't easy. It was not easy. I remember we had a lot of phone calls.
Yeah. I went to go eat, pray, love in Chicago.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Then I went down to San Diego to see you and spent time in a timeshare, just me, myself, and I.
Yes, yeah. That was fun.
I had great friends and good support, and leaned into the wholesome. I feel like when people go through breakups, they have a tendency to binge and do all the things that you know that you shouldn't do. So I think leaning into the wholesome and doing things that will ultimately fill your cup are much more rewarding.
Does 38-year-olds still work at the hospital?
I don't know. I haven't been back at the hospital. Public service announcement. I'm going to say it straight to camera. PSA, do not date the medical providers at your local hospital. And medical providers, don't date patients at your hospital. Because on the off chance that things don't work out, you might have to find yourself a whole new hospital. That's not why, thankfully, I moved and didn't have to access services there anymore. But also, I didn't want that awkward run-in. So yeah, I don't get medical care anymore. No, I found a more local medical center to me.
So do you know what he's up to now?
Last I checked, he is happily married to a woman who has my name.
Wow. Okay.
Small world. What are the chances?
How did that make you feel when you found that? When did you find that out? And how do you feel?
There's this trope about don't be the girl before the girl that he actually marries. And, you know, I think when you find out that someone you dated before gets married, I think there is that moment of shock. But my hairdresser was actually telling me this, that for people that are perpetually not ready to get married or not ready for a serious relationship, they won't be ready until they decide that they're ready. And then whoever they're dating at that moment becomes their person.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think like when I found out, there was like that moment of shell shock. I was the girl that he dated before the girl that he married. But also on the flip side, he ended up being the guy that I dated before the man that I'm going to marry. So again, So if I hadn't dated him, my life would be so different. And who knows if I would be with my current partner. I think that relationship had a purpose. I think I was meant to meet him in this lifetime, but ultimately he was not my person. So take the lessons learned and leave the rest behind.
Yes, absolutely. And I love your partner. Your partner's great.
He's all right. Andy, seriously, thank you for helping me co-host this episode.
Absolutely. You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank y'all for joining us for the inaugural episode of Relation Sis. My name is Cara. And remember, somebody loves you. You. Bye.